Okay guys, my name's Jeremy. I'm doing a hopefully short-ish video about my workflow in Logic when I am recording music, whether it's my originals or covers. I had a couple people ask me specifically how I do drums, and I am not a drummer. I am a guitar player. I am kind of a singer, mostly a songwriter. And so when it comes to drums, I don't have the space to set up a drum set. I don't know how to play drums, and I don't really want to deal with the hassle of miking and mixing a full drum set. So I do all of my drum tracks in Logic using their drummer software, and also just by MIDI mapping and kind of adjusting hits and stuff. So I'm going to show you kind of how I do that. I'm going to try and keep this a short-ish video. Hopefully it doesn't get super long, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through a couple different methods on how to do this and how I do it. So yeah, let's jump over. I've got Logic here pulled up. I'm going to get this out of the way. I'm using OBS to record this. Okay, so we see Logic. I have already recorded a little bit of a riff here. I've got some guitars and bass, and then down here I've kind of already gotten started on some drum stuff. So first, I'm just going to show you what I have recorded for the guitars. This is just some riffs kind of to showcase a couple different styles of riff with like syncopation and hits and stuff like that. So what I do first is I select my tempo. In this case, it's 185. It's a little bit of a faster song. And then I record kind of the skeleton of the song. I record some riffs, set a couple of tracks. So here's what that sounds like. Okay, so there's some syncopation in here, there's some triplets, there's some breaks, start, stop, and stuff, and then a little later I have this kind of more chill, kind of slower bridge, some acoustic guitar, some affected clean guitar. And at the end here I have this heavy riff, which is like a slow, just big kind of meathead. All right, it starts with two guitars and then it blows up into this big. Okay, so pretty straightforward stuff. There's some different kind of feels, some vibes, straight ahead rock, kind of mellow groove stuff, and then big heavy riff. So if you want to do this this way and not using actual drums, the first thing that I would recommend is open up a drummer track, which you'll find right here. And when you open a drummer track, I already have one up here, you will see that you can click this little plus button and a drum track will just magically appear. And if you play along with the song, you have drums. It's incredible. There's so much stuff that you can do with this, and it's actually, you can get by just with manipulating this drummer track pretty well, actually. The first thing you'll notice is this little box here, this slider thing. And you'll see, hopefully you can read, that says simple, complex, soft, and loud on each of the sides. And so by moving this little dot around in real time, you can control how loud or soft or simple or complex your drum beat is. And it just does it on the fly like that. So this is, again, straight ahead rock. So we got hi-hat, and you can see highlighted over here what drums are playing on this beat, and you can change that. So if you want this to not have any hi-hat and have toms instead, you just click over here, and then it's really cool. Do the same thing with cymbals. You've got like tambourine, shaker, and stuff like that. And then in between, for each one of these, you can adjust like what cymbals you want to be playing. So if I want this to be big, loud rock crash, then, and then, you know, you can switch to the ride over here. So it's really cool. And the kick patterns, you've even got like half time, double time, really intuitive, really easy to use. You got a fills knob over here, so by turning this up or down, you can control how many drum fills there are during the length of the beat. You can make it swung or straight. And then you can also, just by dragging here, you can control the length of the loop, and then you can obviously loop it over and over and over again. So that's just the manipulation of the beat itself. Now, sound-wise, you also have control over your voicing of the drummer. And Logic gives you, the default one they give you, his name is Kyle. Meet Kyle. He is the pop rock drummer. And you can see these are beat presets down here. So this is like his presets, which are kind of based on like, I guess, pop punk alternative stuff. But you can see here there's a bunch of different kinds of drummers. And when you switch to one of these, like Anders, who is the heavy metal hard rock drummer, not only does it change the play style, but also matches a different kit to his playing. So you'll hear on this, much more aggressive sounding, some double kick pattern in there, big open sounding heavy metal kit. Same thing with like the Britpop guy. It's going to be like retro, crazy fast tambourine. And that's just for the rock side. I mean, you've got like alternative, there's songwriter, hip hop, like drum machine type stuff, and even like percussion, which is great for if you do like acoustic singer-songwriter stuff, because it's mostly djembe and like shakers and claps and stuff. I usually keep it on Kyle. I like Kyle. We've worked together for years now. And I like the East Bay drum kit setting. So the other thing you can do here, if you go up to this side where this knob is, you have control on the mix of the drum set. So this is like if you have all of your drum tracks, and you can mix if you want more kick, if you want more snare, blah, blah, blah. You can also adjust the amount of compression. You can make it sound really like squashed. I sometimes play with this tone knob here a little bit. So if we just listen to, just gonna loop this here. If we play with this tone, you hear it kind of changes the sound of the drums a little bit, scoops out the mids a little more. And then there's this room knob, which gives it more of a live feel, gives it a little more reverb. Super cool stuff. So there's a ton of stuff that you can do just right there. Now the thing for me is, where I like to go a little bit further with it is, I have a riff here. With a really punchy bass line. And if we pull up this bass here, I can hear the kick in my head, right? So I know where I want the kick to be, but trying to get it to match up with this can be a little difficult. Now there is something you can do here. There's a follow. If you look down here, there's this little check mark here. And if you hit follow, you could choose which one of your tracks up here that you want your kick and snare pattern to follow. It works kind of. I've sometimes had good luck with it. Sometimes it doesn't really pick up on the audio that well. So like, that'll get you close. Now the second way to do this is much more difficult and it's much more time consuming, but it gives you the most control. So instead of using a drummer track here, what I've done down here is make a new software instrument track. And when you do that, it defaults to classic electric piano, which is not what we want. We want drums, obviously. So I'm gonna get this out of here. So I created this one. It's a software instrument track. Now the difference is, instead of having all of this stuff here, we have a piano roll, which is a grid that shows your playhead here. And as I hit play, you see it's scrolling through. But you're also going to see that we have on the piano keys, they correspond to different drums. And so the really, really slow way to do this is to go in beat by beat. And it takes forever. Right? So you can do this and you can make it exactly what you want it to be. But there's a couple of reasons I don't like to do it this way. It's just so slow, and not only do you have to figure out which beats you want to put where, like I have to put all my hi-hats in and they're very tiny. I mean, we can make this a little wider, but I mean, just doing that, it just takes forever. Like if I have to do a whole song that way. But the other thing is, you'll notice that these are all the same color, which indicates that they are the same velocity. They color code their hits, and this is the same with any program that does like MIDI mapping for any instrument. The color corresponds to how hard the drum is hit. So what we can do is select all of them and then make it either quiet or softer. But if all of your hits are the same velocity, it sounds kind of canned, kind of robotic. It doesn't really sound like a real drummer. So the other trick that I can do here is come up to Functions, go to MIDI Transform, go to Random Velocity, and then you can select kind of like a spread of where you want your hits to be. And so then once you hit Operate here, then you can see it's changed some of the colors, so it's given a little variation to some of those hits. But it's still not very intuitive, because sometimes a drummer will specifically play some cymbal hits quieter than others. Like if you're doing kind of like more accents on an 8th or 16th or something, this just does a random scattering of like some kick might be really, really heavy, and then some kick might just be randomly softer. And that's not really what you want either. So this takes a really long time to do it this way, but you get to have control over where your accents are on certain notes in your riff. So what I've kind of done is combine these two methods using the drummer track and the software instrument track. And I have that on this other track here. So I'm just going to delete this and get this out of the way. And then you'll see this track here that I have muted. So what I've done, and I'll show you a little bit further down on the timeline here. Let me mute my guitar stuff. Okay, so this is a track. This is another software instrument track, another drummer one set up for the same kit, the East Bay kit, as our drummer. And what I've done is I place just a random beat, get it close to what I want it to be on the drummer. Like I adjust, okay, I want it to be a little louder because it's a heavier riff. And we're not going to follow that anymore. We're just going to go back to normal here. Okay, right, so it's straight ahead, rock, kick, snare, hi-hat. But then, instead of keeping it on here and trying to adjust with these, I just bring it down onto the software track, and what you'll see is it changes from transients, like audio wave files, to it just drops it all down into the piano roll, and automatically you have it all mapped out for what the drummer track created. So, and it shows you exactly where all the hits are. It shows you, and everything is mapped the way it should be naturally in terms of velocity. So then what we can do here is take this beat they've already constructed, which is close, and then we can edit and we can drag our kick hits and things around, snare, kick, or whatever. If there's a weird fill that we don't like, we can just grab a bunch of it and chop it out. And that's what I've done over here. This was the same beat that we were hearing earlier, but I've gone through and adjusted where the kick hits are on there. So now if we hear it in the context of the song, hear how that matches up with the bass a lot better. So like if let's get rid of the guitar so you can hear that a little clearer. So, and for me, that's meant the difference between having a song that sounds like I've written and composed all of the guitars in a specific rhythm and a groove, and then just slapped drums on it, to an actual song that sounds like a cohesive, like a band wrote it, right? Like you have an actual drummer who's behind it. It does take a little bit of thinking like a drummer, which is something I'm not very good at because, I've never played drums, so I don't know where the hits usually should go, and I'm not able to just grab that feeling right away. But this is a much easier way to do it because 70 or 80% of your beat is already constructed for you, and then you just have to drag things. And like I don't have to go in down here and adjust, like put in all these little hi-hat ghost notes and stuff like that, or little accents on the velocity of the snare drum. It's just all laid out, and then I can adjust what I need to. Now there is some cases, like here a little later in this riff. So like right there, this is a great example of it. You can hear in the guitar tracks. Let me just mute this. Syncopated riff right there, and it's never going to do that on its own just by adjusting the drummer riff. So I come in here and I've just chopped up part of this beat, and you can see right here that I've just let me make this a little bigger. I've just got a couple of crash hits and a couple of kicks that follow that beat. Now, and since this is like a triplet feel, you'll notice that's kind of in between two blocks. So that is one tricky thing that you sort of have to play with. There's a little bit of trial and error there because this grid is set up as just straight 4/4. Now you can quantize these. So if we go, let's see, that's a quarter triplet. So if I hit this Q here, it should adjust that right to where it needs to be. And I'll do the same thing with these here. So that tiny little movement there, and probably didn't notice it, but so now it's perfectly on for that triplet. It takes a little bit of time, and you do have to sort of know where it needs to be. So it's a lot of like listening to the riff and then placing a hit and then kind of going back. Again, if you're a drummer, this is all going to be like second nature, and you're going to know where to put it. But it is still time consuming to place every single one of these hits. And, you know, maybe a drummer, like even though it's natural for them to play this on a kit, when you're looking at it in this format, you know, you might not necessarily know whether or not to make your hit softer or lighter. So again, this is a much easier way for me to do it and still get it to sound like a drummer playing with the song. Same thing here. Really syncopated beats, so I just went in, and this is a beat that I created just on its own. And you'll notice most of the velocity here is sort of just kind of all just heavy. But for a quick passage like this, especially when you want a lot of drive, it's okay to not have you know, a ton of quieter notes and stuff. So all of that is just doing the same process, taking a beat created in the drummer track and then dropping it down onto this software instrument and then manipulating where the hits go and everything. So you can hear there's like a couple of fills. I mean, that like that sounds a little goofy, and I can go back in and edit that. Like if we look at this fill, it's just like a bunch of bogus stuff that the drummer software thought a normal person would play. In that context, it doesn't really work. It might in somewhere else, but I can always go in and manipulate this and do however I want to. So I will say doing fills is the most difficult part of this because, you know, it's got to sound natural. It can't be like speed rolls and stuff like that. It's got to kind of make sense with the groove and everything, but it is more time consuming because you have to individually place those notes and everything. So, and then in the quieter section here, same thing. Just taking this beat, and for this, when it was on the drum track, let's see, I don't actually have that pulled up, but we can bring this over here and kind of replicate what I had to do to make that. So, started like your normal beat, right? But I dropped this down to half time, moved this to cymbals, made it a ride cymbal, and then I also dropped this down to soft, made it a little more simple sounding. Really pulls back on the kick and the snare there. And all I would have to do is just drag this up higher and you could make it a completely different sounding vibe. Tons of kick and snare stuff in there. I don't usually go that complex with it. Like on this slider, I don't bring it up to that corner very often because it's just so busy on the kick and the snare and stuff. In another context, it would probably work again. But so what I did was kind of soft sounding. Since my tempo is set really high, even though I've set the kick and snare pattern to be halftime, Logic has a tendency of keeping the cymbals really fast, matching that tempo, even though the rest of the kit is doing that. So what I did is when I brought it down into my software instrument track, I just took the cymbal hits, and there were twice as many of these cymbal hits, and I just deleted them so that I had, you know, whatever that is, an eighth or quarter. Forgive me, I don't know how to count. Sounds a lot more mellow, makes a lot more sense. And then, so for on this heavier riff, so we've got just guitars playing it, and then once we come to the big part, and that's it. I mean, it's the same thing. I just build another riff here, or another drum beat here, and in this case it was going to cymbals, crash is the first one here, halftime on the kick and the snare, and then for these big slow riffs, I always make it loud and simple, and then you can adjust the kick from there. Now the one thing I did do on this, to just show you one last little thing, is this fill at the very end. You don't have to. They have all these different different cymbal hits. It's got a left and a right crash, and then it has different versions of the hi-hat, either open or close. But down here you have these choke hits, which is great for doing these like quick endings or a break in the middle of a song. Sounds great. So yeah, that's kind of my process for doing this, and I've gotten a little faster at it over the years, but it still takes a while. The easiest thing would be to hire a drummer, but at the same time, to do that and have it sound this well, or this good, is you have to, have high quality mics. You have to have something nice that you can plug it into. You have to know how to mix a drum set. You have to know how to mic it. You have to get a good performance. You can't just go in and edit hits on the fly. So this is a much, much easier option for me. And I think it sounds pretty good. And you don't have to use Logic's drum samples either. I don't have it loaded up right now, but I have Easy Drummer by TuneTrack, which is another drum sampling software. So you can use any of them. You can use Superior Drummer. You can use Steven Slate drums, all these different like MIDI drum sample things, and you can do this with them. Now, a lot of them will have way more hit options for you. You can do like, stick edge, stick tip on the hi-hat and stuff like that, and you can really get in and fine tune it. And some of those programs have some built-in loops that you can adjust like this as well. But yeah, this seems to have worked out all right for me. The Logic drums sound okay. I think if I was really trying to make this sound like really professional, I would probably get a better sounding drum sample pack, or maybe just have an actual drummer record it. But for what I'm doing, just releasing music on my own or recording covers and stuff, this works great. So I'm gonna flip back out of this here. So that's it. If anyone has any questions on this, be sure to leave a comment. If you have any questions on other recording techniques, like I'd love to do another one of these videos talking about how I get guitar sounds or even riff writing and stuff like that. I'm going to try and maybe start making more of these. So definitely, if you're interested, subscribe to my YouTube channel here. I'm kind of picking up a little bit more with uploads and stuff. So yeah, leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And hopefully this was informative. Hopefully it wasn't too drawn out. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time.